Cultural appropriation is the adoption or use of elements of one culture by members of another culture. This can occur without proper understanding or respect for the culture being appropriated and can perpetuate harmful stereotypes. It's often considered disrespectful and can be seen as a form of exploitation or oppression. Whitewashing refers to the practice of casting white actors in non-white roles, or the portrayal of characters of color as white in film and television. The term is often used to describe the lack of representation of people of color in Hollywood and in the entertainment industry more broadly. These are some of the criticisms people have for a film like Nacho Libre. But here's the spicy take. I think all these criticisms are valid, but I'm glad the film was made the way it was, because it's an excellent film. Welcome to Guillermo Tell.
But beneath the clothes, we find a man. And beneath the man, we find his nucleus.
Nacho Libre has become a cult classic. It stars Jack Black as Ignacio, a friar who becomes a luchador to provide for an orphanage. The film is known for its unique blend of comedy and heart. Black's performance as the lovable and determined Ignacio should get all the praise. The film's use of lucha libre wrestling adds an extra layer of humor and excitement to the story. Nacho Libre has been criticized for its depiction of Mexican culture. It's been accused of perpetuating Mexicans as poor and uneducated. It's also problematic how they depict lucha libre as something that's very overly comedic. Not to mention that Jack Black is playing a Mexican guy in the movie, which is definition whitewashing. I like to add that this film has actually been produced by Nickelodeon, and I think it's probably the best Nickelodeon produced movie ever. However, a lot of reviews say otherwise. In most of the reviews I've seen, a lot of people criticize this film, again, for cultural appropriation and whitewashing. But there's also this element of it not being funny and the humor being very stale and childish. But I don't think that's really the case. I think the reason why people don't like this movie is because it's hilarious, but it's uncomfortable to laugh at. You see, a lot of the jokes a lot of the things that are funny in the film are things that people don't feel like laughing about because it's touchy, it's about race, it's about culture. Like Nacho Libre, the character, Jack Black is playing someone who's a funny character, and when we laugh at him, we feel bad because we feel like we're laughing at a culture, or we feel bad because we feel like we're laughing at a race. But what if I told you that I find it funny too? If it's funny, laugh. Over the last couple of years, I've noticed that as a society, we have strayed away from hot, touchy topics, and we have reframed our language to be more intentional in how we use our words. But while doing so, we have lost a big part of humor and comedy. And while I think these great leaps to be more educated on certain cultures is smart and also valid, I think we are losing a lot of things that can bring more unification. It's these real implications of race and culture that comedy once would touch on. And I don't think it's the humor that like, oh, black people are like this and white people are like this. Like, I think that stuff is way overplayed. The truth is that if you're looking for these problematic issues in Nacho Libre, you'll find them, and you'll find them easily. But Jack Black's character, I think Jack Black's character is genius. It's a character done by a white man who's supposed to be Spanish, but his Spanish to English accent is spot on. It may be overplayed in traditional Jack Black style, but for the most part it's accurate. Jack Black's Ignacio didn't feel like an outsider trying to play a race. It almost felt real that it should be applauded for. Like, I knew Jack Black wasn't Hispanic, but there were at times in the film where you're just like, that's pretty Hispanic of him. Whatever that means, but I think a lot of people find this stuff problematic because our culture tells us that this stuff is problematic. But as a Hispanic person, watching this white guy play this Hispanic person, it's pretty funny. People sound like this. Hispanic people who speak English sound like Jack Black's accent of Ignacio. I also like to say that I think there is a fine line between laughing at and laughing with, and that's hard to draw. But I admire the comedians and I admire the comedy that attempts to do this type of humor. Because I know if it comes out really bad, you guys are going to get clowned at and you're going to get canceled. But those who attempt it, just attempt it, I applaud it. We salute you. Because I think it's a certain type of humor that is truly comedic. I don't think this film gets enough attention on how it depicts other cultures within the film. The two cultures I like to talk about today is the religious circle that Ignacio is a part of and the wrestling culture, which are both staples in the Latin community. It's these little details in the film that give it heart. As someone who fears the Lord and grew up in church, I think this film depicts religious norms pretty gracefully. I think it's easy to bash and kind of clown on religion because people of religious circles are not seen as an oppressed group. And the film doesn't do it like that, and I think it's something that should be noted. It makes us laugh at things that are funny within religion. Nacho Libre makes it funny while showcasing what people in religious groups talk about. Themes like the importance of baptism, prayer for selfish gain, vows of celibacy are highly discussed in religion, and instead of mocking the Lord, we get a good look at religious values, illuminating the human nature of it all. Because religious people are kind of like us.
But sister, they are just niños trying to release their wiggles.
Ignacio, they are wrestling in a sacred place.
Okay, orphans.
Lucha Libre in all forms of this type of wrestling is a show. The performance is such an underrated art. There's a lot of rich culture in Lucha Libre regarding the masks and the history. And the film doesn't really unpack it that much, but what it does show is how much we love wrestling. When you're from a small town, the little things mean so much more. When there isn't an abundance, you consume much more of what you have. And in these small towns, like the one in the film, more people value wrestling because there's pretty much nothing else to do. The wrestlers become the superheroes, the celebrities, and they all have all the fame in the town. And I think Nacho Libre captures this masterfully. It captures the Spanish audience masterfully. We all grew up watching wrestling. We don't want to eat bean soup all the time. And we all have religious backgrounds. But even outside the Spanish community, Nacho Libre tackles a pretty universal theme. How do we manage our life with our selfish desire? Visually, I think this film is beautiful for its traditional Mexican landscapes. The film's a good mix between Napoleon Dynamite and any Wes Anderson film. Not to mention that this all-star Spanish cast was properly executed. Although it may be inaccurate, a film like Nacho Libre is still important because it sheds light on a story that may have never been told. I like movies like this because it doesn't feel gimmicky. It feels like a movie with clever dialogue and great visuals, and that's what it relies on. I like Nacho Libre because there's a funny realness to it. I like this film and I hold it close because I grew up in a Spanish religious home and I enjoyed watching wrestling. And I think Jack Black spoke to me more than any other Spanish actor could. This film would have never been as good if it wasn't for the cultural appropriation and whitewashing, because it's not a mockery. It's a heartfelt film based on a true hero that would have probably never been uncovered if it wasn't for this film. This film is honestly a small town story and I'm glad it was made. Jack Black's humor is smeared all over this. It shows his comedy chops more than anything else I think he's been in. His performance had me rolling the whole time, even watching it recently. I hope this didn't feel like a love letter to Jack Black, but he really did make all our childhoods wonderful. Nacho Libre's underlying message is something that I think about almost every day. If you fight for something good, God will bless you. Thank you all for watching.
Surprise.